another episode of TNFro Is Reading. I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. In this week's episode, I will be rocking out to more Voltaire-isms, trying to stray away from Felicia-isms because they are a little bit more caustic and I don't think they're helpful. And these idioms by a great thinker seems more apropos for the times that we are. I will still be contributing to the WTF Y'all. And if people wouldn't say stupid-ish, I wouldn't have to drag them. Discussions about Sweden, the Lyon, then deflect, blame game, and you can be encouraging without demanding mob delusions. And our President Obama has fittingly done that over this past weekend in celebration of this class of 2020. I have so many concerns about those guys, and I'll probably share them sprinkled out through this episode as well as upcoming episodes. I also will be reading What is a Rooti, celebrating the life of Little Richard et al. Life, the Pursuit reading, what my nerd behavior, what I'm watching, what I'm reading, and what I'm writing. And I hope you will enjoy this episode as much as I've enjoyed creating it. And thank you for tuning in. Welcome back to the episode. Well, it seems like there was a busy week for nonsense. More likely, there were several things that actually happened. But before I get into that, I want to basically just celebrate Sundays. Sundays is thoughtfulness. And I have started on a regimen of thinking and looking out and researching thought leaders that can be encouraging and are encouraging, even in these times. And that's why I've gotten stuck on Voltaire. Well, actually, after I found his 20 top quotes for business, I'd lost it for a minute, but I actually found it. I kind of know where it is now. But anyways, Voltaire instructed us when he wasn't dragging the Catholic or Church of England. He was saying we should take responsibility for our destiny. Each player must accept the cards life deals him or her, but once they are in hand, he or she alone must decide how to play the cards in order to win the game. And in this time of Corona, I think all of us have been dealt a bad hand. Every last American, every marginalized race, every marginalized race, the kids 2020, older people, babies, everybody has been dealt a crap hand. But what are we going to do with it? Well, we have the opportunity now to look at what our strengths are and if we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, why don't we do it? Why can't we take the time now to expand our knowledge base? Look at those things that are interesting and look at the past, see the mistakes and things that don't work, and then dedicate yourselves to doing something different and being better. That's why I'm always saying I hope the new norm is not like the jacked up old norm, because that was just smoke and mirrors. And I can say this, I guess, because I got my coffee in, or my caffeine fix, with Writer's Block Coffee. I have a relationship with them that preceded the pandemic. And waking up and making my fresh ground coffee with the medium roast has been a godsend. You can actually search for them online. They have a a subscription service where you can get every 2 weeks a fresh bag of gently medium roast coffee shipped right to your door. And it is necessary in this time, in these tragic times. It gives you that zip to get you up, and it has like this chocolatey cocoa finish, and it just smells great um, as the scent wafts through the house. I love it to death, and I am glad that I am an influencer. So navigate to their uh, section and tell them using my promo code TNFro Is Reading, and you'll get probably another 10-15% off of your total order. And check out the subscription services, because this is a great coffee to have in every morning if you work from home and you don't go anywhere. Also, since I'm getting ready to do the WTF, you may want to also check out Ship a Bag of Dicks, because I wish every last non-partisan American will just send their congressman that keep doing stupid shit and that jackass in charge just a bag of dicks, because he keeps saying stupid stuff. And I just don't understand how and why his anything he says is a part of the news cycle. He told us he was a sociopath. He told us he's going to create chaos. He actually has done that, and he continues to create chaos because we keep giving him attention. He needs a bag of dicks for the very same reason all the conservatives that blindly support his delusions need these. So navigate to shipabagofdicks.com, use my promo code TNFro Got Jokes, and you will also get another percentage off of your total order and shipping. I just can't even begin to tell you just how much that whole administration gets on my nerves. But anyways, the latest thing is how and why they get on my nerves is because everything that has going on with Sweden. Evidently the Swedes or people are most of last week was dedicated or commentary about how the conservatives have looked to Sweden, of all places, in their liberal, left-leaning policies as encouragement how our government should proceed in reopening the economy. One of the things that the Swedes were what made them say, nah, girl, we didn't say that, and you need to go and sit down somewhere, because the Swedish economy and their society is very different, very monolithic, definitely not as populated as ours. Don't get it twisted. They do have 28,500 cases as of when I started writing this, cases of corona reported, and 3,500 related deaths. But the impact on their economy is great. And in Stockholm, they have a very relaxed policy about the stay-at-home orders, etc. But there it's very, very different. They have healthcare. Everyone, regardless of their income or their ability to pay, has access to healthcare. It's not like the food deserts, and it's not like the medical deserts that Corona has severely unearthed. Most of us in the medical field already knew about places that we would not want to send our worst enemy. But there are no places like that in Sweden. They also view the government differently. And this is one of an entrepreneur basically said this. They trust their government. We don't. Our government is inept. Theirs is not. And her words, and I think it's female because only a female can drag you like this, but she says in the U.S., much seems to depend on the individual, and people are not very fond of governmental control. The Swedish strategy is very much relying on the individual's trust in the state. And she says it's irresponsible to apply strategy that Swedish authorities introduced as proactive measure to slow the spread of the infections to a different country and situation. And she would describe those Republicans as turncoats. The decision to keep schools open were about freeing up healthcare workers. This is in Sweden, to deal with the pandemic and not to stimulate the economy. And basically, they're right. They don't agree that you can have a lockdown forever. And Stockholm, with the most relaxed social distancing and governmental controls, has the most cases of the virus. And they show these pictures of these crowded cafes in the city center of Stockholm, and people are sunbathing. The problem is, if they did get sick, they would get the help. They don't have to, and they have a robust public health that can shut it down and then can do the contact tracing. We don't have that in this country. Because of the last 4 years in several swipes of pens, has dismantled public health, but that can actually go back probably to the Reagan period, and also even to the Bush period with the SARS epidemic. The complete dismantling of the public health system with defunding and fire, and now we fired everyone that had sense and that actually would not support the delusions of the dumbass in charge. So the things that we have to do and that we know that can actually stop this virus is out of the bag, because the system that should have been in place to combat it has already been dismantled by years of mismanagement in the last less than 48 months of firings and write-offs. So I tell you this. Sweden said basically keep us out of it. What is good for us is not good for y'all, and y'all are only taking those parts and taking those parts of our situation to apply to your cutthroat, greedy, economically driven bills and tactics. Keep our name out your mouth, because we didn't say any of that, and nor do we support any of those things that you want to do because you try to make more money for a small group of people. Also, it is possible, and we saw it this weekend, to be encouraging without demanding mob delusions. I don't know how many people actually had the opportunity to watch President Obama and his speech for the 2020 graduating class, because this educational year was cut so short that it also, again, a coronavirus unearthed the disparity of our infrastructure, indeed, but also of this class systems, even when it applies to schools. People have to send their kids you have to go to school to learn, but also because your parents have to go to work. We get that. And if it could have been that we didn't have to keep schools closed, that it would also add extra stress to the first responders as well as the healthcare workers, and also people that the living situation of a lot of these kids is absolutely deplorable. And they only get a break when they go to the school. So when you shut down the school and you leave it shut, that they're not going to get their education. And then when you shut down the school and say, okay, then you can go to electronic learning, then you know about the disparity and the lack of Wi-Fi access, and kids having the equipment to be able to learn. Not all of them have hacker grade computer with a gig or two coming to their house the speed of information exchange. They don't have it that fast. They don't have the same hookup as I have. So, and they can't get the basic education because it's not going to reach the people that actually need it. So we're setting loose a lot of kids with half-assed education, but that was how it was before. They were sitting in the same schools, and because of a variety of reasons, because they were scared of school mass shootings, they didn't have the books. They actually were not in the right level or intensity level for a variety of reasons. They are now the, and this is really sad for me to say, that the 2020 graduating class, when they stopped the education, it is the high school diplomas and probably even a 4-year education, you know, don't are not going to mean a whole bunch because they already had a disparity in education, and then it basically completely stopped mid-year. So all the time and what they could do to actually be prepared has also been truncated because of this particular virus. It is sad to say, but it's also true. And recognizing that we still have people in higher levels of government that has access to information, but they, for whatever reason, they don't understand it, so they don't know how to apply that information. I find it also all very discouraging, but I'm hopeful that come fall, actually come summer, when it heats up a little bit, and then when we're able to look at all this information, we can vote all these other people out and have people that understand the depth and the need and the totality of what we actually have to put to right. The Cliff Note version of governmental guidelines absolutely made me angry because it seemed like there was something that I could have written. And I probably would have given the Cliff Notes version on the show. But people need a detailed and sane, step by step way to, and also safety, step by step way to actually proceed. And the only way we're going to be able to proceed is by having cooperation and being in lockstep, having guidelines, and then being able to enact those guidelines. But when you give us crap and then you said, well, y'all can just go figure it out, that is just a recipe for a disaster. So I'm hopeful that the non-Cliff Note version of the guidelines about how we're going to proceed at this aftermath, and even during how we should conduct ourselves during the pandemic, somebody has saved that whole unedited file and the nonsense that they actually have. No, everybody can have a glimpse of that, and then so they will know what was actually had to be cut out. I hope that is also will become available because I do think that you sell people short when you don't expect them. You expect them to act as stupidly as you do. And how dare you think that nobody else, just because you don't understand it, nobody else can understand it. And we all want to get engaged and to proceed in a logical manner. And we can't have this wild, wild west chaotic free for all that's going on now. I think it's beneath us as sane and rational human beings to think that people will not want to be given some guidelines on how to proceed. That makes no sense to me. And in a modern society, we can't have this level of chaos. It makes no sense to me. And why would you say that is okay? I'm just hopeful. I can only be hopeful because this complete breakdown is, if it's going to give us the tabula rasa of just a blank slate that we need, fine. And then we can just have to, because we can only rebuild. We can't drop much lower, but we can all just have in our arsenal the tools to be able to build back up, because all of this is being busted apart. So what can we do to actually build, to gather those tools together, to go and to build up everything, the truths that we hold self-evident. What are those tools identified? Having a healthy society and people in power with some sense. We got to just start there and look at those things that have been completely turned back, and then realizing what do we have to do the, not only to do the right thing, but the right thing for everyone as a community in whole. What is it going to take to be able to do that? So before it all just melts and just becomes disintegrated, um, that reckoning is coming, but we got to see how about like break down some things, and with things that don't really make a whole bunch of sense, those things are going to have to go away. I think if we all would use this time and come up with a sane game plan, and let all this stuff, all the chatter, if it doesn't really help, or if it's not really, it doesn't really help, then that's when you basically just block it out, and you just keep gathering up all the knowledge that you can. Make sure the tools are in place, so when sanity can rule again, then you can actually have a plan to enact that makes more sense than the chaos that's going on now. And I'm hopeful for that time, and I'm hopeful come fall or the beginning of spring of next year, we will be in a better position to be able to handle the comeback that America is going to go through. I honestly believe that. And and as I was murmuring about before, the hopefulness and better times to come, I think that was the whole message of President Obama, recognizing the fallacy and the stupidity and the lies and the craziness that's coming out of the Jackass House right now, and knowing the promise of the future. We have to be hopeful, and we have to lean on the future, because we can't stay in the past. Present's kind of crappy, but the future and future greatness is what we're going to look forward to. And I'm hopeful for that myself. So, in my spare time, not only have I been doing a significant amount of reading and writing and watching TV, writing, I've actually been posting to my blogs. I have and I have to call them this week because I think it expires. But I have my own personal website, FeliciaBaxter.com, that I post on through my publication of my book, but I also have my Dale's Angels Inc. On WordPress that I actually also post to. And in celebration of the life and death of Little Richard, Andre Harrell, and Betty Wright, we lost three great musicians and artists week before last. I wrote this dedication that first appeared there. And it starts out with the first line: a wop babaloo bop balop bamboo, tutti frutti all Rooti. And that it sums up Little Richard's life. The song was penned by someone else, but he made it his own. And Richard Wayne Penniman, better known as Little Richard, is or was an American singer, songwriter, musician. that lyrical, nonsensical hook is more than likely just a word that rhymed with tootie. And what is a tootie? Also, when you think about it, he passed away um, on May 9th at the age of 87. And I couldn't really fathom him even being that old, because his style, and he influenced from everyone from Elvis to Prince. In his own words, he was the innovator, the originator, the architect of rock and roll. His and his style influenced many. He coming out as queer in the South at that time, I can't even imagine. Or his suffering could have been unimaginable. But he is celebrated just because he always did who he was, and he was very entertaining in doing it. The other two great musical influence, Andre Harrell, who was the early mentor of who we call P. Diddy or Puff Daddy, and he would go on to discover and produce a teenage Mary J. Blige. He died of heart failure, just also the same weekend. Um, his early days were part of the legendary Def Jam Records, before he launched his own label. And then Miss Mary Wright, who's Soulful Cleanup Woman, she also had a short battle with endometrial cancer. Um, and I posted a picture of her um, from 2017, and I've added her uh, to my Spotify playlist of encouragement. That particular song, in addition to Tutti Frutti, and some of the later produced songs of Andre Harrell and Mary J. Blige. And everyone has been encouraging, and what they do has been entertaining, and to keep our mind off of the chaos of the moment. From Claudia LeBlanca, who was actually bullied in Italy, and then the great art and reclusive artist Banksy. They are using their art to be encouraging to the masses during this period of time. And they just remind us of that there's so much beauty that surrounds us in big and small ways. Kind words from a UPS worker, delivery of my flea spray to my house, heartfelt words of encouraging from unlikely people like G.W. Bush, and funny little kids and pets making me laugh out loud. I encourage all of us to continue this search and look for the beauty of life every single day, and then share it with others. And most of all, I wish everyone peace, blessings, and most of all, a reminder to wash your damn hands. Life in pursuit. In this new normal created by the Rona and protests to reopen the government, I have been given time, or I choose to utilize my time in silent contemplation. This morning, my mind rested on the Declaration of Independence and the meaning of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do we really have any clue what it all means? The Declaration of Independence was a message to King George III, and basically it said, "You tripping, and we ain't doing what you say anymore." And here are 27 reasons why. And if you come at us, we're going to cut you. That's ironically speaking. I'm not sure what they expected to happen. The initial settlers were convicts and people fleeing religious persecution. They all had a streak of independence already. So let's break down the most widely known and incorrectly applied statements in Lockean thought ever. John Locke, philosopher, Thomas Jefferson influencer. Yeah, bitches, I read. We hold these truths. Truths are fact or reality. The reality is Rona is not going away. Proper application of proven science and data with prudent governmental policy on this data is how you fight a pandemic. Bullying and firing experts into supporting xenophobic greed-based policies with no reason and contrary to reality is folly. There is nothing in the Declaration about responding to silliness and support for unwise and acting imprudently. You cannot and really should not argue with a fool. Fools are silly. Their arguments are limitless because they can pull nonsense out of thin air and call it truth. I absolutely lose it when I see news reports and so-called leaders holding court and saying absolute bullets like, yes, we have to reopen schools, but we have no plan on how to do it safely. How about shoring up infrastructure for access to online and secure bandwidth for continuation of virtual education? Supplying equipment and making sure the students have power. How about mobile hotspots and towers to boost signals to areas that need it? Rona now has proven that we, the rational and prudent individuals, have to continue to search and process the truth. We must know that everything online or part of the continuous news cycle is not always based in fact. It is still up to us to search for the truth and decide what to believe. And you're going to hear me sip my coffee and stir a little bit because I got more to say. The next part of that statement to be self-evident. Self-evident means obvious. Well, duh. You have a stealthy bastard of a virus that hangs out, infects you, and then forces the body to overcompensate and still wrecks your life. Populations we once thought less vulnerable, healthy children are in the cardiac ICU with precursors of heart attacks and congestive heart failure. Prevention of the spread and death by washing your hands and staying inside. It's simple truth. Duh. That all men are created equal. Really, I am not so sure about this one. We can make an argument that people, women or men, have the possibility to reason and should have conscience. But daily we have evidence to the contrary. Take Nero. Well, he probably had tertiary syphilis. Jack the Ripper, probably his parents were brother and sister. Ted Bundy, sociopath. Jeffrey Dahmer, cannibalistic sociopath. Current administration, gang of elected sociopaths. People with identity crisis or narcissists will consolidate their power to support their vaulted image that they are so above commoners, but this grandiose self-image is in their heads. Game recognizes game, sane recognizes insanity. I'm still hopeful truth will win. That they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, certain rights that other people, governments, churches can't take away. And here I switch the last of this statement. Liberty. Too much freedom without regard to common sense is again folly. You're not to pay your bills, not to pay taxes or anything else that make you a criminal, but you will go to jail. The pursuit of happiness, self-gratification, truthfulness, satisfaction at the risk of the community benefit or the detriment of another's life cannot be happiness. Yes, some people have this overwhelming drive to be part of a group to socialize, but guess you won't die if you are not in some crowded club, not seen in the new Inn restaurant because you won't get sick, nor put somebody else at risk for your happiness. That among these are life. Human life, in a strictest sense, is a collection of cells with a specific genetic code that works together to carry on specific activities in a certain pattern. Knowing your purpose and accomplishing goals, one can argue self-awareness, ability to reason and to make decisions clear or otherwise, separates us from the next class of non-human mammals. If everyone is taken out by illness or is dead, there is no life. So pursuit of nonsensical things that will not better society, better your position in society that harms others makes no sense to me. And I will endeavor that my new norm is not part of the old BS of the old norm. And that's all I got to say on that. Riddled with deviant behavior. And I say this because this was my lineup from the previous week. Lolita with the Vampy Sue Lions, Yikes, The Barretts of Wimpole Street with the great actress Norma Shearer, Portrait of a Lady with Nicole Kidman, Carrie, the 1952 version with Jennifer Jones and Sir Laurence Olivier. I'm going to just stop right there because each one of these, I guess for their times, were considered high art. Let's take each one by one. Lolita. I've seen articles about why this was written, and I guess I had never watched it from start to finish. But in the times of the Me Too movement and surviving R. Kelly, this movie has blown my mind as to why the ham sandwich it was made. Oh, and of course, I forget to mention the king of the pedophiles. I don't know why I never watched this movie from end to end. Tess of the D'Urbervilles by King Pedophile Roman Polanski. Child, each one of these uh, so-called works of art, I believe, they all had their striking similarities, even though they were period pieces. Uh, Women through the ages have been blamed a lot of ish and always put on blast because of the shortcomings of men. They were done so, and it started with the natural orders of things with the Judeo-Christian uh, religion, and then has been propagated through most of Western civilization, and even all through the Middle East and the Far East. They're all in all of these cases, they people mistook obsession for love when they're two completely different things. The relationships were more about control, control of the situation, control of the other person, and it just was just appalling how love and relationships were exemplified. I guess you couldn't call it drama if it didn't have a Hollywood slant. And as I was saying, Lolita with the Vampy Sue Lyon, with the father or stepfather taking over her care because he had hots for her. And basically, this knowledge drove the mother. What was her name? Shirley. I can't remember. I think it's what's his name from um, ER. But anyways, how it drove the mother to basically walking in front of traffic, and it exemplifies the relationship between a mother and her daughter. How it was obvious that the mother character was jealous of the irreverent, selfish teenage daughter played by Sue Lyon. And granted, she was blonde, she was pretty, but she was also very deviant and defiant. And she was completely sexualized in this whole movie. She was a teenager, she was a child, and this guy preyed on her to the point where she got hospitalized and then got broken out by another pedophile, which ended up being the psychiatrist that was just trying to get his ends and how he was going to get her. Yikes! Why was this movie made and how could this movie be made? And it just went to that you could look at it two ways. How it seemed to basically focus on just how unprotected women were and how resilient this teenager was, but she was a victim from the beginning to the end, from her mother's neglect and jealousy, and she was continually victimized by a series of different men. But she survived. She was a little bit broken up by it, but God, dog, I just was. But these men weren't blameless. All of them needed to go to jail, and all of the suffering that they did, it was because they brought it on themselves. Because what they did was try to focus in on this young woman, this young girl, and then they victimize her for their own gratification, and I think it's sick. Tess the Herbervilles by King pedophile Roman Polanski. This dude basically had victimized and evidently raped a 13-year-old, fled the country, and was continued to be allowed to create. After his exile from the United States, he continued and actually won a couple of Oscars in his exile. Ain't this about a bitch? But I watched this movie from the 1979 and I was struck by the storyline as well as the cinematography, and also the resilience of another victimized young, beautiful woman, and how every man that she came into contact with, from her own father, who controlled her to go after the dead, the D'Urberville, because they were D'Urbervilles, and then but they found out that they related to the D'Urbervilles, to the family that bought the name but was in no relations to them, continued to be victimized, had the dude's child, ran away, became a milkmaid, and then married some other man that when he found out her background, because she told him, he dumped her, and then she goes back to the old dude because he was going to support her. She ends up stabbing his ass to death. I was like, well, God, dog. But I was concerned because it was 1979 that it was going to be like some weird 8mm in black and white, and it was all going to be on some type of soundstage. But it looks like it was actually shot on location, and it's some of the most beautiful places. I don't know if this was the French countryside or the English countryside. Either way, it was amazingly shot. And even though I think we should separate the art from the philanderer and the pedophile, this was Roman Polanski's one of probably a great movie, but it also probably reflected his own criminality because it was obvious that this young girl was also victimized and how nobody protected her. And maybe this was his guilt talking. The character Tess ended up getting hanged for the murder of her husband, but it doesn't take the way of the guy that originally raped her. But it doesn't take away his basically guilt because he got the ending thing is dude got what that was due to him, and as well as the husband that actually tossed her aside, he continued to suffer because it was obvious that he continued to love her, and he actually had gone through some horrible illness, but he still loved this woman that he also victimized. And maybe this was a penance for Polanski, how he actually paid his penance. But I don't think justice will not be paid until he actually serves his time. The other movies that I watched were basically along those lines. The Barretts of Wimpole Street. This was the life and times of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who, under the guise of love of her father, her tyrannical father, there was a scene where he basically says, "You were the only of my 9 or 11 kids that were born of love, so you must love me unconditionally." And he goes on, and there's a scene where he's basically confessing his love to his daughter and making her saying because he loves her the most of all, she has to basically take the place of a wife. And that type of love is criminal because it is his daughter. And she basically has to run away because technically she's a slave to her father's love, to be able to run away to another tyrannical male, Robert Browning. And it plays over again. Carrie. She is from a poor Midwestern family. She hooks up initially what it sounds like a door-to-door salesman, and then Sir Laurence Olivier, and she becomes an actress. But this is not before she keeps getting duped by these men and she loves him purely. She tries to live this Victorian creation of womanhood, but she is neither of those things. And she gets dragged, but she brings herself back up. Uh, but society's look on a woman that does what she can to survive is not favorable. They give them the side eye, and she wants to be respected, but she can't be respected because she lived with homeboy when she first got to Chicago, and then she runs away with the Laurence Olivier character who can't get divorced from his wife because she won't get divorced because she wants to get every single dime that she possibly can. And then he ends up becoming a beggar, and she still wants to love him. He's a beggar, he's in the streets. She's still young. But again, it's obvious that she started out, she couldn't have been no more than 18 or even 16. She kept being victimized again by the men in this society. And she was held to a standard that she had, but she was held to a standard by rules that did not take into consideration of how she was played by everybody that wished to play her. Not only from the Laurence Olivier and the door-to-door salesman, but also by the sister's husband who demanded she give a portion of her pay to him just to live in the house. For what reason? Why wouldn't he allow her, and why did he have to control all the money? That's the other thing I couldn't understand. All these women actually had their own scratch, but they were, even though they made the money themselves, they were not allowed to actually control it. And it was even more so in Portrait of a Lady, which was based on the Henry James novella. The same thing. The Nicole Kidman's character, she was rich. She had gotten an inheritance from her uncle who was prevailed upon his father. The cousin prevailed upon the father to give her an inheritance so she could be free and experience the world. But then she ends up hooking up with another pedophile, controlling, sadistic husband that I never understood. She's the one that had the inheritance, but he controlled the scratch. What in the world? That made absolutely no sense to me. And I could not see myself working that hard and to be under the thumb and the guise of a male just because they're male and they still control every aspect of my life. That's what actually I found these movies entertaining, but it also lent itself to the control of institutions from marriage, the church, even certain governments, how people are, and in this particular case, in all of these movies that I watched, how people control other people, their freedom, their finances, all of these things just completely blew my mind. And how, now I'm African American and free, how I can comment on all of these things, but it completely blows my mind just how it's been only a short period of time that we can exercise these freedoms. Or even my podcast, how I'm allowed to learn, I can read, and I can comment on all of these things. When I look at a female back in the day, not too long ago, that I could have been killed from the knowledge that I know now, and then speaking out against the frivolities of men, how that could have been a death sentence to me. And it's completely amazing how far I've come, and people have come, and my people have come in a very, short period of time. So what is this nerd reading? Well, I have continued to tackle Anna Karenina by a very chatty Tolstoy. And initially I thought I was going to stop reading it because of the chattiness. There were multiple plots and subplots. There seemed to be a lot of unnecessary explanation of the foibles of the namesake of the book, Anna, as well as her paramour Vronsky, her stupid brother Alexei, even the shyness of Konstantin Levin. I started getting more intrigued with the characters Kitty and Dolly. And it really didn't start picking up until like very much almost 3/4 of the way through the first part of the book, because yes, this book, 900 pages of it, is like 6 or 7, 8, 9 different parts. I didn't think I was going to be able to cruise through it, but my ability to speed read and look for keywords has come in handy. I was not going to be able to perseverate 200-300 pages about the jackassness of Vronsky and how he played Kitty. I just couldn't do it, y'all. But what I found striking is I thought I was going to want to go back in time and throat punch Kitty Shabatsky. But the more I read about her character and how, in her response to being jilted by Vronsky, it made it the book I just wanted to, it just made me want, or forced me to want to follow that subplot. And I'm glad I did, because I've actually gotten through the first 2 parts now, and the development of that character was actually amazing. So the first 51 pages, I thought I was going to kill myself, but at page 52, what I realized was how in Russian society, 18th century Russian society, just how restrictive it was, but how they thought they had a loosening of the previous society rules. How Kitty's mother was old school, and even though her meddling with Dolly and her husband Alexei, because he ends up cheating on her, sounds like multiple times, with the French governess, she still used the same superficial ploys to want Kitty to be hooked up with the philandering and playboy Vronsky. She thought that he should act honorably. He shouldn't just flirt with the daughter, but his only intent was to flirt because she was the prettiest one, but he had never any intention of marrying that girl. But it did speak to the tremendous sway that women actually had in this society, of the little that they actually had control of. They could be manipulative, and you don't want to cross them. The turmoil and the hiccups and the convulsions that love actually portrayed was like a game or a flirtation, and that's all Vronsky saw. It seemed if the mother was looking for, and the prince knew this because he game recognized game. He couldn't stand Vronsky. Levin was simple, clear, easy, and he was always surrounded, and because of the when he was in the country where he was most comfortable, was always dim and kind of misty, and nobody kind of knew what he did out there. But that was how he was going to guarantee sustainable wealth and his happiness, therefore his potential wife's happiness, by all the things that he actually did in the country, by understanding his tie to the land and how what he needed to do was renewable. He was the only one that was sure of his love and professed it, but it was not returned. So by page 63, Vronsky was all dash and dash, but no substance. And the father knew that, and he had already dissed her. But I did find kind of a difference between this and Henry James, Washington Park, because the Austin Sloper did not want the pretty and ne'er-do-well Townsend, Morris Townsend, to love his daughter because he couldn't stand Catherine. That's so different than the prince's love for his youngest daughter, who he actually called his favorite. Then going on, he knew the type. No intention of marrying Kitty, just playing games and flirting. Kitty was depending on that unseen language of looks and tones, but it was just not enough. Because he would never profess his love to her, he would move on to her cousin Anna. And then it wasn't until it picks up, that was from page 66 to 134, when he throws her over in pursuit of the cultured Anna character. And again, it was a game. He didn't become, is because his Kitty's love was just so real and actually just so available. He could actually throw it away and go after somebody because it was more of a challenge. And Kitty actually seriously made herself sick over the unrequited love from Vronsky, and then knowing that Constantine Levin, loved her, she basically threw that love away, just like Vronsky did. The first part, almost 100 pages, was the uh, uh, seizures and twitchings and subterfuge of Alexei, Levin, and even Anna and Vronsky. It doesn't pick up again until page 248 that Kitty is prescribed going away from it all and getting her life back. And in Germany, she befriends Varenka, who also was jilted in love, who has found purpose in her life by helping others. And this has created, and she looks on it as a jaded eye, that this is the type of healing that gives Kitty's life purpose. Varenka is a nurse of sorts who has a purpose outside of the frivolous cares of society. And I blow past, again, another almost 200 pages where I don't waste any time or trying to understand the appellations of Vronsky and Anna. I'm also very interested in how Kitty, who almost loses her life over the love of Vronsky, she gains her life by finding purpose of helping others. And again, the restrictions of society are also what things that intrigues me, and how there's still people can still live a purposeful life outside of the restrictions of the society that they were living, because the things that society puts so many restrictions on and holding back, and the frivolity and the balls, those things they would not have helped Kitty. It wasn't until she saw a different life that was purpose filled that she could actually get her sanity back in her place, and get her life back, because she comes back much more serene, but even a stronger person after her time and learning at the knee of Varenka and the Varenka stepmother, that she could have gotten from any ball, from any shopping spree, and even from the tyranny of her own mother. Because her mother only taught her what she herself knew and the limits of that. She had to go away to a whole different country outside of the restrictions of the frivolous society to be able to get her healing. So now I'm looking forward to looking through the second and subsequent parts of the book to see how she builds on it, she continues to grow, and she survives as a completely different and strong woman, more so than the stupidity of Anna, that character Anna. So in my second attempt to create my own entertainment, I've started a new screenplay. My first screenplay um, Hamilton Heights is actually being edited by one of the many screenplay companies that I actually found out from the Writers Guild. But this one, I just realized that I saved it with Amy Screenwriter, and it should be Felicia Baxter, MD, MBA. So this is a story of Julia. No, it's not. Stacia Burke. Millennials can be messy. The butterflies that can be. It describes a family in a black family, which is unlike the Crazy Rich Asians, that the movie that I recently also watched, but I didn't make a comment of in the podcast because I didn't think it was applicable to what I was actually wanted to do for that particular part, Nerds for Watching segment. Um, this was to portray that the rich, crazy Asians are not the only minorities with a long history on long old green scratch stupid loot. Africa has been ravaged by colonialism, slavery, civil conflict. There's always been those civil servant families in African cultures that knew where all the bodies were hidden, literally. But also, they had insider information to land speculation, oil contracts, gold, platinum, and diamond. The first Bankston Burke was a swap mate for a Danish shipper with ties to Sierra Leone, the Congo, South Africa. Following his superior's lead, he made some suspect trades and would eventually buy the entire company, securing the original Burke fortune. He would arrive in the New World extremely wealthy and very free in the mid 1800s, when most African Americans were still bound in slavery. The Industrial Revolution would see the fortunes of the family expand, and then the war effort would see the fortune span again, and then with the current tech boom and services industry. The family was ruled by smart and savvy patriarchal system, with a favorite shown to the eldest males for successive generations, with recent changes, acquisitions being ruled by greed and not by good sense. The opioid crisis, industry pollution, and sexual abuse allegations and cover ups would wreak havoc on the family finances, influence, and respectability. A share swap a decade before would allow several lesser members of this once affluential family, mostly females, to explore their own lives, and most did just that. Need to flip those words. Stacia Burke and her cousin Lyle Burke, already engineers at JPL, would leave their posts and retire to the family northern France estate and chateau and raise horses and revive winemaking. They would have remained in relative obscurity if Stacia had not been pulled back into the active management of the family business due to the mistakes of her father and other male relatives. And come back she would to take her rightful place as the heir and brilliant, innovative leader of Burke Enterprises. Burke Enterprises and subsidiaries expanded through acquisitions and has mostly stayed solvent and fluid, which has allowed it to remain private for decades. It wasn't until the recent expansion into pharmaceuticals, entertainment, and energy which at once became evident of the risk outweighs the gains. From the first time her Manolos hit the pavement outside of the car in front of the family home at 10 Washington Square, the sound of her heels clacking against the highly polished floor of Burke Enterprises downtown, she would have to successfully navigate the landmines often set by those related to her, with the worst shade being thrown by other female family members who also thought they deserved her position. The moderator of the Vipers, female crew headed by Julia Burke, Stasia's stepmother, and the Butterflies headed by Ellen and Stasia, who tends to Bankston's Burke's the third wife, who is in memory care. There is definitely generational differences in approach to relationships and status, with a progressive outlook favored by Stasia, who coins conscious profitability and the monetization of social activism and would precede FBI and NASA's decamping to the Deep South. As much as Stasia is drawn to Harlem of her mother's youth, the New York winters are not to her taste. And as she remembers the kindness of her grandmother to her and her mother, and the reading of The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, when the mansion based in Terra went up for auction, she saw it as a place to allow her grandmother and grandfather to rest in milder climate and a site of escape. And I think I'm going to need to end that. The newest acquisition for the family trust, real estate trust, would be the site of the family would be an old southern plantation in which the family and become a newer ancestral home for the entire Burke family. And I think I always am intrigued by crazy wealth and how families survive and navigate it all, because I am from that type of family that we didn't have, there's no inheritance. There is, what I do know of my family is very limited in scope. So I'm always intrigued and try to create these families that, even though there's this drama and there's always subtext, how the previous generations have done something to preserve and to truly pass on to subsequent generations. They're not squabbling over just a couple of $1,000s, where and they don't sell their birthrights of their families for pennies on the dollars. How would they have actually acted if they had multiple millions and billions of dollars that they actually had to preserve for later generations? I'm not sure if my family or anybody's family would be able to do that. But I think Robert Johnson's family and other, even African families that have gotten their family's wealth by ill-gotten gains, they can understand the preservation of wealth, and passing what to pass on, and how can you pass all this money on to generations and subsequent generations, and how you preserve it, because you can only teach the subsequent generations the value of preserving the family fortune if you allow them and you give the tools to those family members that have the ability to do that preservation and then understand it. And you have to also think, is it really all that important? And in some respects, to preserve extensive family lines and the semblance of healthy relationships, you can't teach people, or you can't expect people to preserve what those things are important if you don't give them the tools, or you never gave them the lesson. And that's the whole point of stupido noir riche. Stupid black rich people. Because we're talking about billions of dollars, not just a couple of thousands of dollars, but truly generational wealth and billions of dollars. and how it is possible for a Black family to do this. I don't think it's too far from the truth. I also don't think that the nouveau riche that we're experiencing in the last 20 to 30 years is testament. There are families that probably do reach back to the mid 18th century that did figure it out. And that's why I'm writing the script, because I honestly think this fictional family is not so far from the truth. So there you go. And I hope you stay tuned because I plan on reading in a subsequent episode the first scenes or the first act from this ready to stream teleplay. So thanks. I don't know how many people realize the reality of our condition. We are in a national pandemic, but we still have to move on and go on with our normal lives. People have changed jobs, are stressed because of income, lack thereof. There are food deserts and insecurity. And parents still have to take on the responsibility of caretaker as well as the teacher of their children. These things are hard. Why are you trying to do it on your own? When I actually broached this question to someone, I think they got salty with me because I recognize that I'm not a trained psychotherapist, and I had an allergic reaction to psychiatry, my psychiatry rotation. But the need is real. That's why if you're struggling with depression or anxiety, please call 1-800-273-8255, which is available 24 hours a day. There's an online chat feature at suicide prevention on suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat/. And if vodka or some other substance is the problem, because you've been over imbibing in these days of lockdown, you can call 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357 for 24/7 help. There's also modalities like Headspace and Talkspace and Doctor On Demand, where you do not have to suffer in silence in the privacy of your car for the fractional cost of conventional therapy. This journey is way too hard. I am not a psychotherapist, so please do not call me. I can't help you unpack the layers and layers of psychiatric pathology that you need that help from a trained professional. And don't forget to navigate to www.dalesangels.inc for all special offers and updates on nerd news. Drop me a line at TNFroIsReading.com or even leave a 2-minute non-trolling voicemail at 423-463-0658. And I may even read your comments on air. And I thank you for listening. Have a great day.